The European Union likes to fashion itself as a torchbearer of human rights. It is almost always the first to scream human rights abuse. It loves imposing sanctions. But you know what? Europe is all talks and sanctimonious sermons. The fact is, when it comes to Europe's own interests, it forgets everything. It puts business over all. How else do you explain this? Exports from Xinjiang to the European Union has risen over 200% year on year. The only explanation is European hypocrisy, one that goes beyond Xinjiang.
Europe is a hypocrite, and you should not have qualms in saying it out loud. Sample this. Imports from Xinjiang to European Union rose 217.8% in January and February this year, compared to 2024. EU's 27 members imported shipments worth $312 million from China's Xinjiang. The number last year was $98 million. See the graph going up? That's European hypocrisy. That's Europe exposing its truth. When it comes to its own interests, Europe forgets its sanctimonious sermons. It forgets its sanctions. In 2021, the European Union sanctioned 4 Chinese officials for their role in abuse of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. In 2022, EU lawmakers were pushed for a genocide designation in Xinjiang. A resolution adopted by the European Parliament on the 9th of June 2022 read, quote, China's serious and systemic human rights violations against the Uyghurs and other ethnic Turkic peoples amount to torture, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Unquote. In February 2023, EU had raised, quote, serious concern at the persistent restrictions on the exercise of fundamental freedoms, use of labor force, unquote. So what happened here? Why did Europe continue to do business with the companies that are hand in glove and profiting from the Uyghurs' genocide? The crimes being committed in Xinjiang are well documented. Over 1 million Uyghurs and Turkic Muslims are being detained in so-called re-education camps against their will. They have been separated from families. They are being tortured, raped, forcefully sterilized. They are forced to work in deplorable conditions. In 2022, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights said, the abuses in Xinjiang, quote, may amount to crimes against humanity, unquote. So is the EU tone deaf, or is it just a hypocrite? One that delivers sermons in public while secretly striking deals to safeguard European interests. Earlier this month, the European Union drafted a law that banned products made from forced labor. Here's what's extremely interesting. Sanctioned and banned products somehow always make their way to Europe. The Russian oil, for example. You see, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Europe sanctioned Moscow. It banned all Russian oil imports. But secretly, Europe continued buying Russian oil via other countries. EU countries have also found a loophole. What EU has banned is Russian oil import, not crude. So technically, countries can still import Russian oil that has been refined in a third country, like India. Look at what the analysis by NGO Global Witness found. In 2023, the European Union bought around 35 billion barrels of refined fuel, originating in part from Russia. Quick question, whom exactly is the EU fooling? Or does it think the world is blind to its hypocrisy? We have bad news.
First, he flexed his muscle against Russia. Then he posted photos hitting a punching bag with his biceps bulging, flaunting his strength in action. He's no other Then French President Emmanuel Macron. His pictures came only days after he started taking a harsher line against Russia. With the European elections approaching, the French president has gone from a dove to a hawk. But many have been questioning if the pictures have been enhanced, much like Macron's approach towards the Ukraine war in the face of elections. Or is he simply having a midlife crisis?
With sweat dripping from his forehead, an angry expression on his face, and arms reaching out to hit the punching bag, with biceps bulging and veins popping, and all of it in black and white. This is the French president that we are talking about, not Robert De Niro from Raging Bull or an advertisement for Cult Fit. Just take a look at these pictures. Emmanuel Macron seems to be done with his soft boy image. He is now flexing his muscles, both on the internet and politics. The photos were posted on Instagram by the president's photographer, Soisy de la Moissonnière. And when the head of a state puts out a picture, there's always a hidden message. So what's the one here? One cannot help but draw a parallel with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's a man who wears many hats. He holds a black belt in both judo and karate, and is happy to flaunt his skills when requested. He has been seen dribbling a ball on the court, defeating his opponents, be it badminton or ice hockey, riding a horse in the mountains, and fishing in a tranquil river in Siberia, both bare-chested by the way. Putin might be what they call a macho, and Macron seems to be following his footsteps. The pictures also remind us what former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson once joked about. He said G7 leaders should strip down, flex their muscles and show they are tougher than Putin. Johnson was being ironic, but Macron seems to have taken it quite literally. So what is he trying to portray? Is he asking Putin to bring it on? Because consider what has happened in the last few days. Macron has transformed from a dove to a hawk, at least in his approach towards the war in Ukraine. The president, who has always advocated for peace, has now urged NATO not to rule out deploying troops on the ground. He is taking the lead, pushing Europeans to think hard about their security, even about the sacrifices that may soon become necessary. And then comes these pictures giving Macron the edge of a fighter. But this isn't the first time the French president was caught on reel in his gym. Earlier in January, Macron was seen with boxing gloves slung over his shoulders and a punching bag in the background. In this clip, he urged the French to warm up for this summer's Paris Olympics. He said working out daily is good for health and a lot of other things. Let me tell you, it's also good for his PR campaign, conveying an image of youth and dynamism. Or on the flip side, is Macron simply having a midlife crisis, throwing himself into a hobby to find some sense of self and gather some validation along the way by posting it on social media? But satirists are doing what they do best. Considering the pictures come after Macron toughened his stance against Russia, they have taken to portray him in military gear leading the French to war. Others are claiming that the photos have been edited to make Macron's muscles appear bigger than they actually are. Is that the case for his newfound hawkish war approach as well? How genuine is the new Macron line? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
It's now time for a little quiz. What is Chinese President Xi Jinping's dream project? You're on the right track if you're thinking Belt and Road. BRI is China's road to debt traps and global domination. But this road is now riddled with potholes, courtesy of Chinese corruption. On Gravitas, we've been telling you all about the total corruption in China. Tonight, we'll tell you how Chinese corruption has jumped borders, how it has branched out, forcing Beijing to launch an international manhunt for corrupt BRI officials.
China is on a manhunt. It is looking for corrupt BRI officials. those responsible for failed Belt and Road projects, like the Pokhara airport in Nepal. It is empty. There are no international flights taking off from or landing in this airport. In Ecuador, a $2.64 billion dam has 17,000 cracks. 17,000! There are structural cracks in dams in Uganda and Pakistan too. In Zambia, the Bongo-Kalabu highway has no traffic. Or bicycle and stray animals. Why was this highway constructed under BRI then? And for whom? In Democratic Republic of the Congo, China had promised $3 billion worth of infrastructure. This was in exchange for extracting critical minerals valued at $17 billion. So far, projects worth only $1 billion have come up. But Chinese businesses have reportedly paid bribes worth $50 million to former President Joseph Kaliba and his team. Ecuador's dam may be leaking, but former President Lenin Moreno and some officials reportedly received bribes worth $76 million. China's BRI is stinking of corruption. Fighting it has become the top priority of China's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. It is China's anti-corruption watchdog. Belt and Road was launched in 2013. Chinese President Xi Jinping sold it to the world as a means to fund critical infrastructure and connectivity, as China's gift to the world. Beijing poured in endless cash, as much as $1 trillion. This money was given as loans to cash-strapped countries. The dealings were not always transparent. One estimate suggests that half of BRI loans are off the books. They are nowhere in the official statistics. Who got the money? What was the nature of the transaction? Who knows? The BRI projects also have too many parties involved. There are Chinese officials, Chinese leaders, bureaucrats of other countries, leaders of recipient countries. This is a hot mix and a hotbed for corruption. The result? Cracked dams by default, and bankrupt and debt-trapped countries by design. Today, 60% of BRI countries are in debt distress. And not always is this debt helping China. Sometimes Beijing is forced to bail out these countries. Sometimes countries are bailing out on Beijing's BRI. Italy's exit made global headlines. It was bad press in a year China was marking a decade of Belt and Road. The corruption isn't helping. China went to the world selling BRI as a win-win deal. It did not deliver the high-quality infrastructure. It delivered connectivity in places and ports no one visits. Today BRI stands exposed, and China is pointing the finger at corrupt officials. We suggest it follows the money trail back to Beijing.